Okay, I introduce you Professor Paola Magnano. She's an associate professor of social psychology at the Core University of Enna in Sicily. She's a member of the board of directors of the Italian Association for Vocational Guidance, and her research interests are focused on vocational guidance and career counseling, with particular attention to the construct of positive psychology, to the interaction with migrants and other vulnerable clients, and narrative career counseling. She's actually involved in many research teams on the themes of subjective well-being and courage. So her keynote is entitled Career Counseling Aimed at Inclusion, Career Intervention for People with a Migrant Background. So you can start.
Thank you, Cristina, and good morning to everybody. I want to introduce my presentation on career counseling for a person with migrant background with this phrase of Ban Ki-moon. And to remember us that migration is something that regards persons and their aspirations to a better life, and not only a social phenomenon. So migration is an expression of the human aspiration for dignity, safety, and a better future. It is part of the social fabric, part of our very makeup as a human family. So I will start with some statistical and demographical data that then I will focus on the InteLAC migration. So first of all, we have the data from migration in the 3 countries that are involved in this project. We will start with Austria, and Austria, Belgium, and Spain. So in Austria and Spain, the percentage of non-European immigrants is higher than in Belgium. So Austria and Spain have the higher percentage, even if is a little percentage, 8 and 3% for Austria and 7.7% for Spain, of non-European immigrants. Then both in Austria and Belgium, immigrants are at higher risk of low education and school dropout, showing a higher rate of unemployment with respect to nationals and European immigrants. In Spain, the risks for school dropout are similar for both European and non-European immigrants. Differently from Austria and Belgium, in Spain, the unemployment rate for non-European immigrants are not dissimilar from the other categories, national and other immigrants. You can see this data in the left side of the slide here. Okay, non-European immigrants are in orange. Now I want to share with you some reflections on the perception of European citizens about immigration in general. So European citizens are convinced that immigration is a concern for Europe, and the respondents across the respondents in Europe tend to overestimate the portion of immigrants in their country. The correct estimation is present in Spain and in Austria. Close to 1 in 3 Europeans think that immigration from outside Europe is more a problem than an opportunity. And the obstacle identified by the largest share of respondents is difficulties in finding a job. That is one of the main concerns about inclusion. But these are data and reflections on migration in general. In fact, the migration from Latin American and Caribbean countries is a phenomenon multifaceted and difficult to study in depth. First of all, we have to have a reflection on the historical movements. In fact, the migration flows between Europe and LAC countries have different direction through the centuries. Until the beginning of the 20th century, the migration was directed from Europe to Latin America. From the middle of the 20th century, about 1950, to date, the movements have been inverted their direction, as shown in these pictures. So now let's have a look at the characteristic of this migration. The migration of people from LAC countries to Europe is something relatively new, especially if compared with the flows in the inverted direction. These new dynamics embrace a large Latino American Caribbean immigration and has had a rapid growth in the 1990s. And the demographic composition reveals a feminization of the international flows toward Europe. Generally, the immigrants are young and there is a large presence of women. And the prospect of a better life on the other side of the Atlantic, higher salaries, more stable jobs, medical insurance, all characteristics provided by European countries have triggered recent economy emigration from LAC countries to Europe. The vast majority of LAC migration is directed toward Southern Europe. So literature identifies in Spain, Italy, and Portugal the most preferred countries to migration. And as they are the countries with the highest offer of low-skilled jobs, as agriculture, tourism, construction, and job in the domestic sphere. So increasing female labor participation in recent decades gave rise to a strong demand for domestic and care workers' labor. So this phenomenon involves mainly women workers. The most part of studies on Latino Americanization of immigration flows is referred to the Spain that due to language reasons is the main country of migration for LAC migrants. But which are the consequences for inclusion in general? First of all, the risk is job segregation. In fact, immigrants are mainly employed in agriculture, travel industry, construction sector, and domestic work sector, in jobs that are considered unattractive for local citizens as they are low-paid, precarious, and or part of the informal economy. This percentage reported in a study of 2012 and maybe are similar to the present, have underlined that men are mainly employed in the construction sector while women in the domestic work section. So gender plays a key role in this occupational segregation, not only in Spain, but globally in all Europe. In fact, as underlined in other studies conducted in other countries, the increase in the number of immigrant women in such jobs is due to the industrialized nation's growing need for caregivers and domestic works. So the risk of job segregation is higher, especially for women. In fact, in the global economic system, the full-time employed women in the high-income countries need to be substituted in their domestic duties and in their caregiving activities. In Spain, this phenomenon is particularly important as the immigrant women coming from Latin America and Caribbean, they share cultural and language backgrounds as they were former Spanish colonies. In all Europe, for caregivers, a significant portion of job opportunity is the informal market, offering precarious employment with no or minimal labor rights and social security. Paradoxically, Spanish women's liberation from caregiving and cleaning duties has been achieved in part at the expenses of migrant women, but not only regarding Spanish women, but all European and women in the north of the world. So, how can we define inclusion? So we have talked about some general characteristics of this phenomenon. Now we have to focus on the process and the contribution that we can give to overcome this situation and to avoid job segregation and facilitate the better social inclusion. So first of all, we have to define inclusion. Inclusion is a combination of three processes that are participation, connectedness, and citizenship. Participation includes economic, social, and spiritual engagement. Economic engagement includes in itself education, training, and work. Connectedness is associated to the sense of belonging and relationship with social groups, to feelings of bond to family, friends, and community. Citizenship inclusion encompasses engagement toward the community and the possibility to access to services. So the problem is not only having significant relationships, but the possibility to actively interact with the context, receiving support, and having guaranteed their rights. The threats to inclusion have been identified in several studies, are linguistic barriers and the correct management of a language that is the knowledge also that is a cultural matter. Then we have the mismatched educational background and discriminations. And which are the path towards inclusion? First of all, and this is a concern of European citizens, social inclusion is linked to work inclusion. So we cannot reach a complete, a full social inclusion if persons don't have a work. Paid work enables livelihoods and supports inclusiveness process in the community. If people work, can be respected as persons, can support their families, and can have access to the economy of the country. In the global north, economic independence and self-sufficiency are generally considered positively by most communities and are more likely to keep prejudice and rejections at bay. So I think that we are all aware of the fact that work and working is important, is the most important aim when a person arrives in a new country. But we have to wonder if any work is good. Is any work good? Or is any work always a decent work? Because the lack of mastery of host country languages, the culture shock, the lack of recognized qualification, the lack of networks are obstacles for newly arrived people to have a good job, to have a decent work. The culture shock, for example, is an anxiety arousal derived from the contact with a new culture, combined with feelings of confusion, loss, and powerlessness. So arriving in a new country is not simply transferring the residence, but implies a new adaptation to a different way of living, and this causes these feelings that Chen has named culture shock. Then there is the problem of the recognition of the qualification, and not always the qualifications of different countries are aligned, mainly if the countries are not in Europe. And last but not least, the lack of networks. So the knowing people and knowing how to move in the relations with the community is an obstacle in accessing to employment, and also could cause a difficult in opening the new arrived in toward the community, as it is simpler to interact with their connationals rather than being included in the new community. So what can we do as a career counselor or professionals that help and support immigrant in finding a job or in constructing a career? So first of all, we have to start from the consideration that a person who is migrating is facing with multiple and interconnected transitions that are cultural transition, working transitions, and housing transitions, and so on. And all these transitions have to be managed in the same time. So generate a sense of confusion or of powerlessness. And some authors have described the condition of migration as a sense of self in transition that, in my opinion, is an exemplification, and a good exemplification on what we intend for interconnected transitions. So first of all, we have to consider the different phases of transitions. I have reported the phases indicated by Yakusho and colleagues, and but there are different classification of these phases. For example, immobilization, shock, minimization of change, self-doubt, letting go of negative appraisal, testing new options, search for meaning, and integration and renewal. So it requires time and engagement and effort, the passage from one phase to another. And a career counselor, a professional that takes care of immigrants have to consider the moment which is the moment in the present. So the suggestion is to provide the adequate support for each phase of transition, and to design services that are supportive, holistic, and integrated. This means that the services that take care of immigrants should be integrated by themselves, and should work in networking as as taking care and managing the problems of immigrants requires some transversal skills that should be acquired by all the persons that enter in a relation with strangers in a new country. And regarding the interpersonal relations that we have to construct with persons with migrant backgrounds, we as career counselor, or in the role that we are playing, must be aware of something about ourselves, about our feelings, about something that growing inside us. First of all, our points of view. as the most dangerous points of view are those that we are not aware of and can generate unconscious biases or stereotypes and prejudice towards people that we consider strangers, that we negatively see. Then we must be aware of our understanding of the situation, what we consider what the problem is, and what is causing it. And we must be aware of the emotions toward the stranger in our midst. So if we don't have a reflection on these feelings and thoughts and emotions that we feel toward these particular types of clients, we are at risk of not doing a good work with them. So here I have I present some synthetic suggestions on how to project and plan career counseling for people with migrant background. So first of all, it is impossible not to consider the dynamic interaction between cultural, contextual, and psychosocial factors in the life design process. So finding a job is not simply a job search, but it requires the managing of the representations of a job that is different in different countries, the representation of decent work, the knowledge of rights and duties, and the cultural, the consideration of cultural backgrounds, work and lifetimes that differently perceived in different countries and in different cultures. Then I think it is a mandatory that career counselors are skilled on professional competencies on career counseling. So they should manage their work as professionists. So should know the theoretical backgrounds on career counseling and how to guide persons in career construction and career development. But this is not sufficient. And this is only the basic skills, because to be effective in managing career counseling with immigrant people, career counselor should be aware, should work on their attitudes toward migrations and migrants, and should be reflexive on their fundamental beliefs and values. So without this awareness, as previously underlined, we are at risk of biases, of stereotypes, of prejudice. And on the specific migratory phenomenon, they should know the push and pull factors related to the countries that the person comes from. the economic and political context in the birth country, the cultural and social models of belonging. So there is a preparation that we have to do before meeting people that come from a different country. And it is necessary avoiding standardized procedures, preferring tailor-made approaches, even though based on scientific models of career counseling. So I know that in some public offices, there is a standardized procedure to manage some demands on some requests. So first of all, we compile, we fill some documents, then we have the curriculum vitae and so on. But in this case, the standardized procedures, so making the same thing for every people is at risk of losing important information that should be known before activating a job search process. And if not known, if they are if they are not managed, if we don't manage these aspects, the risk is that the process stops or fails. So using the literature on career counseling, we can construct individual or for categories of migrants, but individual interventions or paths that can support the career construction of our clients. Now, I want to share with you some experiences that we have carried out in Italy with the immigrants. The immigrants involved do not come from Latin American and Caribbean countries, but they came from Europe and Africa. But I want to present these experiences as they can provide some suggestions to how to do, how to translate in practice the points that I presented in the previous slide. So first of all, we have a career guidance intervention for young immigrants. These were adolescents, African adolescents, arrived in Italy without their parents. So were unaccompanied minor immigrants. The framework of this intervention was a life design paradigm that promotes the construction and reconstruction of life stories, of identities, and cultural models, together with the social representation associated with them. So career guidance helps individuals to reappropriate their past experiences with a view to building a new vision of their future. In this intervention, we had the career counselor, a professional career counselor that worked with the support of a cultural mediator and or an educator. The setting of the intervention was individual or in small groups, and the adolescents were grouped based on their language spoken. And the instruments were predominantly qualitative instruments and qualitative procedures. So we have conducted 2 different interventions in 2 different communities in Sicily. So the first intervention had the aims to improve self-knowledge and awareness of social image, to explore cognitive representation about work, to investigate how the past might influence their future choices. The reference to the past is important in allowing the reconstruction and the resignification of the experiences, and with the aim to use them for the future. Explore their personal and professional values, expand their knowledge of the Italian marketplace, and analyze their professional interests. The participants were 9 teenagers. So the steps of the intervention are presented in the right of the slide, and are referred to the meetings in group or individuals in which they do some activities with the career counselor. So first of all, the self-knowledge was improved using a game to investigate self-perceived image and social perceived self. Then the tree of life was used, that is a narrative technique that aims to explore the values, the most significant persons, and the aspiration for the future. Then the group was confronted on the definition of work. So the conductor, the career counselor, asked the participants about their visions of work, facilitating the emergence of the significance attributed, the meanings attributed to work. Then career genogram was used to analyze the past experiences and to highlight how they are connected to the present. Then an entire meeting was dedicated to the knowledge of the Italian labor market. The tool used is called the professional cards. So we have some cards which represent person in playing a working activity, and it was required to the participant to identify the job and to say what are the competences required to be a good worker in that job, and how they think then acquire these competencies. Then with the same cards, the career counselor explored the professional interests of the participant, and then there was a final individual interview in which the final profile created by the career counselor through the collection of all the materials that were produced during the previous meetings was discussed. The second intervention that was carried out with the same that is similar to the previous, had the aims to reconstruct the professional story, facilitating the awareness about individual strengths and improving areas, the development of personal resources to cope with difficulties, the knowledge of the professions, the knowledge of the rules of the market labor, and a professional project. The participants involved were 14 teenagers aged between 16 and 19 years, and the intervention was conducted in 5 group meetings, 4 hours each, and 2 individual interviews. So as the previous, we have the first meeting on self-knowledge. The themes were identity and self-image. The second meeting was on professions, the knowledge of the profession and professional interests. The third meeting was focused on fears and how to cope with fears. So how to manage the emotions about futures, values, and motivations. An entire meeting was dedicated to ethnic stereotypes, and then another was focused on digital and technical competencies. Then we had the creation of the curriculum vitae, and through the investigation of the professional interests of the participant, and then the final profile that was discussed individually with each participant. The second type of intervention was conducted through interviews with 4 persons, with 4 adults with migration background. The interviews were conducted using a specific tool that is called My System of Career Influences. This experience was carried out with research purposes, but the results and the feedback that we have received by the participants suggested that it could be a good way to conduct an intervention to help people to work on their career construction. The My System of Career Influences is a qualitative interview that is supported by diagrams, by so graphic representation of the system of influences that are persons or characteristics of the context or the situation that we have that the interviewed had to face with during his or her life, and that have influenced the decisions or the direction of the life. The setting was individual, and we have then, after having collected all the interviews and all the systems filled by the participants, we have analyzed the narratives through the analysis of each system of influences and the voice-centered relational analysis. So we are to identify in which type of system the persons felt as active participant of their choices and of their life, and in which they have felt to be a passive receptor of influences coming from external or other persons. So the results of this experience, of this research, are first of all a greater self-knowledge and awareness of their strengths and their improving areas. Then the recognitions of one's contacts in one's own life context, supportive relationships and networks in their current life that can be useful links for future life. So these instruments allows and facilitates the recognitions of persons or services or elements in the actual relationships that can be supportive and can be used to the future career development or simply job search. The third result is the recognition of both strengths and challenges, especially related to connecting with people in different social systems and barriers to participation and citizenship. And fourth, the suggestions for direction for action. So networking between services to address barriers at different levels and in different contexts, developing relationships that are useful for the development of active citizenship and a source of support for social and labor inclusion. And finally, we have a proposal for a career counseling for immigrants. So we have created, me with Andrea Zammitti, that is with you, and other colleagues, we have created an interview, a semi-structured interview to support the career counseling process for immigrants. And we can share with you, if you need this instrument to test with your clients. So this interview as the following section. First of all, we start with the reconstruction of personal and work history. So the first step is always starting with a personal story. So to let the person to talk about themselves and their personal experiences. Then the identification of the aspiration for the future. Then there are some stimuli on the sense of self-efficacy. So the sources of self-efficacy and how to improve self-efficacy and how to use models of self-efficacy to feel more efficacy in facing with the challenges in the new country. Then there is a reflection on the characteristic of work in general. So what is work for me? Which are the meanings associated to work, and what is decent work. So the aim is to reflect on the rights of the rights and duties related to work and working, and the importance of having a dignified work. Then we have a section of life satisfaction, and the conclusion of this path is the professional plan, and that is discussed with the interviewed. So we are in experimental phase, as we are trying to validate, to use this interview with immigrants and verifying if it is useful and how it can be improved with the suggestions of colleagues that want to participate to this research. So, thank you for your attention, and if you have any question, I'm here.
Any comment or question from Professor Paola Magnano? Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting, very detailed presentation. I think it goes very well in line with our project. I think you touched in a lot of the things that we've been kind of trying to, the path that we've been trying to follow as well. I think it's interesting at the beginning how you started with the perception of how migrants are perceived in the host countries. And this is key also for public policies related to migration in countries and having employability policies. Part of the project was also raising awareness. Migration is not a threat, and the importance of kind of creating spaces for, especially employability for migrants. We also created kind of or we're in the process of creating a course that focuses more on the skills that migrants have rather than the qualifications, because also it's a tricky issue. But overall, I mean, it would also be very interesting if you share with us the career counseling project that you have, because it's also quite related to our project. But in general, it was a very, very interesting presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cristina,
Yes.
non ho sentito, cioè non riesco a capire siccome è lontano dal microfono, proprio non ho distinto le parole.
Ti ha detto sostanzialmente che quello che tu hai presentato è perfettamente in linea con gli obiettivi del progetto, e il primo aspetto che hai sottolineato sulla percezione di consapevolezza è una delle finalità del progetto, per cui sono stati proprio creati dei webinar proprio in questa prospettiva, così come l'altro elemento a cui facevi riferimento sull'importanza di lavorare, no, con lavoratori, con i migranti, quindi è stato creato un learning course e ha molto sottolineato positivamente l'attività di career counseling, il progetto di career counseling a cui hai fatto riferimento.
Okay. Thank you very much. No, it was a problem of distance from the microphone, so it is difficult me to hear you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Thank you so much, Paola, for your speech. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and good work